Hello and welcome, everyone. Today I have an amazing guest with me, and it's my dear friend and a super inspiring Viking brother from the other side of the Öresundsbron in Denmark, Mads Palsvig. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Philip. Good to see you again.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you here, and we have been in contact. Well, when this freedom movement started for me, it was here in Sweden. And you got very impressed by my singing, so you invited me to a rally in Denmark.
Right, November 2020, you came down.
Yes,
You were
yes.
singing, I think, just before Robert Kennedy joined on Zoom live.
Yeah, I
Right,
was
yeah.
singing a song, and we had a beautiful weekend in Denmark, and I got a lot of inspiration for the work I've been doing in Sweden since. But I could really feel that the Danish people, they have, in Sweden, we have an expression, they have råg i ryggen. Do you know that expression?
No.
Now, rye, the you can eat. It's expression like you have a hard, you're kind of tough.
Okay, well,
Tough
know about
mentality,
that.
and I feel that you bring that to the table, and I get so inspired by that every time, that you won't step aside and keep fronting all the people that are doing crimes against humanity right now.
And there are a lot of those at the moment, sadly.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, there are. But today we're going to talk about one of the things that is corrupt and that many people need to have more awareness of how bad it is, and how we can, in order to be free, we need to understand the concept of money and how we are using it, and how we can use it in a different way in order to be more free and to get out of this slavery that the concept of money has become. And you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience within that field, so I want to start there. Tell us a little bit, how did it come that you started working with money?
Yeah, well, it started working with money because I needed to fund my law degree. So I was working on the stock exchange, trading mortgage bonds and government bonds. And then, I wanted to become a lawyer, but then I got married, and the salary was better in the banking. So I continued being a banker, and eventually I moved to London, working for Credit Suisse First Boston and Morgan Stanley and Barclays and other institutions in London and Hong Kong. And I specialized in trading government bonds, particularly Swedish government bonds, actually, in the 90s. I was very, very active there. So I enjoyed my frequent visits to Stockholm ever since, yeah.
So government bonds, and yeah, maybe that's not a super interesting story going to how you did that, etc., etc. But when you have told me your life story before, you told me that you, after a while, you started to see things and understand that things weren't going right, and that maybe you weren't actually doing the world a big favor in your work.
Yeah, I think that that most people who go to work, they want to bring something to the table, want to improve to the society they live in, to their children and their ancestors and so on. And that's the same with people in banking. I mean, I thought it was a noble endeavor to bring borrowers and lenders together to have a more efficient financial market. I think it could improve life for a lot of people. But gradually I understood that that it was being used as a tool to particularly rob poorer nations from their wealth and channel it to few, mainly multinational corporations and their owners. And I started speaking up against that because I didn't like that. So.
And I remember that you specifically told me that you had a speech at some big bank during the big Greece crisis, when Greece were having problems, and you said some things that people just felt that it was true. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, it was, I mean, basically just when the 2008 crisis started, I said, okay, I was at Danske Bank at the time, and I said to the entire trading floor, okay, guys, here's what's going to happen. The Greece, they have financial problems. So the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, will fly in, offer them an expensive loan, paying maybe 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10% interest, which of course you can't, if you're bankrupt, you can't pay that kind of interest, but it doesn't matter. They just need to a fire extinguisher. They need some money right now to pay their bills, so they can't say no to that money, so they say yes. And then the IMF, they come in with the conditions for that loan, and that is normally that they should cut down the amount of people working in the public sector, and then when they do that, then they don't have a salary, and and they can't afford to support the private sector. So the private sector is also closing down, and when the private sector is closing down, then there's even less tax revenues, and that means that then Greece cannot pay the interest on the loans to the IMF, and then they come in and say, oh, you can't pay, then give us all your assets, all your real assets, your islands, your harbors, your utilities, I mean, your energy producing factories, your water resources, just give us everything. And that is exactly what happened. And I explained this is what they're going to do. And it was just totally quiet because everybody knew I was speaking the truth, but you're not really supposed to, right? And so basically I continued after Danske Bank. I went back to London working for Morgan Stanley, and again I spoke out, and I went to a lot of dinners with central bank governors, and I spoke out against Janet Yellen of the Lanesborough Hotel in London with a lot of traders, and I again said, what are you guys doing? I mean, it's like as if it's on purpose, you know. Whenever the international institutions like the IMF and the World Bank comes into a country, they always end up worse off than they were, and all the assets are stripped and end up being owned by foreigners. What's going on? And then since then I was literally fired a few weeks later, and even though I had already made my entire annual budget in the first 4 months of that year, I was the first trader I have ever heard of who got fired having made his budget in 4 months. Never happened before, never happened since, I think. And I was blacklisted. I spent 3 years trying to find a job somewhere, and it was like, no, everything was just shut down. But then I had time to study, and I realized it's not only the financial sector that is rotten to the core, it's everything else. It's the telecom business with their 5G, it's the mainstream media that is lying through their teeth, it's the wars. There's never been any just war. All the wars both sides have been financed by the same people, and it's always a few wealthy families that are benefiting from the wars. It's never the people, ever. Not a single war I know of has benefited the people, ever. And so I'm already against the next war. And of course, as you can imagine, I'm against the Third World War that we're currently in.
Yeah. No, wars have never done anything good, I think. But maybe they are necessary in a way in order for us to think different and in order to have a change. I don't know. So, because if we zoom back into the money issue, how bad is it, and how does it work? What is the problem? Because that's the question. And I've been studying economics, and I've been reading and understanding this for many years ago, before I started to understand how deep everything else goes, like you. And the thing that started for me was that I understood how crazy it is that we are just creating money out of thin air when banks loan out money. And I got very skeptical towards this whole system that I understood at that point. It's built for collapsing. It needs to collapse one day, because it builds on that we need to be more and more and more in debt. So that was the thing for me. But if someone that doesn't know really how it works, can we try to explain in a simple manner how it works and why that's wrong and how it's not benefiting ordinary people?
Okay, yeah, I would like to explain that as easy as I can. And before I say that, I would also say some clever guy said once to me that the thing with money creation is that most people don't understand how it's done. and the few people who do understand it, they're busy exploiting the system, and the people who don't understand it, they are basically being exploited. And I think that's very true. The best way to explain money is actually just to try to accept that it is actually much simpler than you think. Open your mind up and just realize, for example, if you take coins, I think it's very easy to understand that the king, he would mint a coin, put his face on it, and say, this silver coin that only have 1 kroner of silver in it is worth 10 kroner. And by the way, those big guys behind me, they are my soldiers, and they're supporting what I just said. And you're going to pay tax to me every year, and you can use that coin. So, and I'm paying the salary to my soldiers with those coins, and they can buy food from you, and rent a house from you, or whatever, spend the money in your shops, and you can pay your tax with that. So that's basically how the king used to get away with making what is called seigniorage. So the profit of making money is called seigniorage. So he would put in this example I just made up out of my head here, you put 1 kroner of silver in a coin and you say it's worth 10. So he just made 9 kroner for every coin he minted. He made 9 kroner profit, and that profit he could use to pay salaries to his employee. He could build bridges. He could make an army and attack Poland in the Swedish case, or in Ukraine. You're also very good at attacking Ukraine, and occasionally Denmark as well, right? So we also always had a lot of fun together, right? We were probably practicing against each other. So then the next thing is then you have the national banks are being invented, where they start having pieces of paper. So that was the seigniorage was, as you can imagine, even more. If you print a piece of paper and you write 100 kroner on it, it doesn't cost 100 kroner. So the seigniorage is pretty close to 100 kroner. So that means that the government could then issue money and make a lot of money out of it. Now, we in Denmark, I don't know the story in Sweden, but in Denmark, we supported, as always, we always support the biggest villain, and that was Napoleon. So after that, then Lord Nelson came over and carpet bombed Copenhagen, and we surrendered. And then we had a crash, and we lost a lot of money. And then in comes Rothschild, and he makes then a central bank, and he says he will help us out, but he wants to have the right to produce our money. And ever since, basically, it's been controlled by foreigners, the Danish central bank. And so that was so first it was coins, then it's notes, and in Denmark we have about 60 billion, I think, or 60 or 70 billion coins and notes, and that is just made out of thin air. And all those 60 billion came to benefit the Danish population. And now we have about 95 or 90 to 97% of the money is digital, and that is basically money that is printed into a computer. And that is how the most of the money is made right now. And though that money is basically made in the banks when we take out a loan. So when we go down and borrow, if you go down and borrow 10,000 Swedish kroner in a bank, it's not money that is already there. It's new money. They basically just print it into, they type it into a computer, and they make 10,000 new Swedish kroner. So basically, they make 10,000. You come with a piece of paper, you sign it. My name is Philip. You put a signature on it. The bank never signs anything. Please make note of that. When you have a document with the bank never signs. It's only you who signs it, because basically you are signing a piece of paper that you owe them 10,000 Swedish kroner. That becomes one of their assets, and then they have a liability, which is that they type in that they have a liability to you in the form of 10,000 kroner. They put that into your account. So you have assets and liability, and they match 10,000. Their asset base went up with 10,000, and their liabilities also went up with 10,000. This was new money just made right here and there. And that means that 97% of the money creation right now has been privatized. So it's no longer the king who's issuing the money. Now it's the privately owned banks. And they don't necessarily have in their interest to make a welfare state functioning. They don't see it as there may be goals to create social justice or benefit for fighting homelessness and stuff like that. They only have one aim, and that is their shareholders' interest. That's the only thing that they have. So we are suggesting in my party, we're suggesting that we should have money creation the way Frosti Sigurjonsson is suggesting it from he was a politician in Iceland. And that's basically by we are increasing the monetary base every year anyway. We might as well just be upfront about it and say, okay, we increase the monetary base every year with 4%. And then what we should do, we should pay that into every citizen's account. Because why should in Denmark's case, why should foreign corporations like BlackRock and Vanguard have all the benefit? They fly in and they buy up all the big properties in Denmark right now. Why should it be real estate investors with the deep pockets already? Why should they benefit from the money creation? Why should it be everybody? This is money that is created. It's backed by the king. It's backed by the nation. It's backed by all the assets of the country, by its military might, by its soil, by its infrastructure, bridges, and above all, the ingenuity of its population and the willingness to get up in the morning and go to work and produce goods and services for their nation. This is the main thing. I know there's a lot of talk about now, oh, we should have a gold standard or silver standard. Well, guess who has all the gold and all the silver, right? They are the same people who are controlling the monetary system right now. And that means that they can just withhold the gold and silver, and then they can lend it out. And so they will still be controlling the society. I think we should just call it as it is. Money is basically, it is based on the value of the society. It's a little bit like if you play Monopoly, you have some money. You have some money to. Can you imagine playing Monopoly without money? It wouldn't work, right? You need money to have goods and services flowing in your society. If you have enough money, you get a rich society. If you have no money, just look at Africa. The main reason Africa is poor is not because they're stupid or anything, and it's not because for a lack of natural resources. They have many more resources than we do, and they can also harvest 3 or 4 times a year, while we can only harvest once a year. So they should be richer than us, if anything. But they have been controlled, because when the colonial powers left Africa, there was on one condition, and that was that the money creation should still be within the Bank of England and Banque de France. There was one exception, notable exception, that was Italy. Italy, when they left Libya, they didn't come up with that condition. And then what happened with Libya? Gaddafi, when he took over Libya, it was the poorest country in the world. And then within 40 years, it became one of the richest. It has had I think it was like $200 billion of savings. It had 125 ton of gold, no foreign debt whatsoever, free education, free healthcare. You got $5,000 when you got married. Your first car, the government would pay half of it. It was in the constitution. You had a legal right to a home. So there was no homelessness. It was your legal right to have a home in the constitution. So, and of course, when he started making an African gold dinar, a gold-backed currency, which he would be trying to use to bring wealth and prosperity to other African nations than his own, that's when they decided to fly in and kill him. And not only did they kill him, they also destroyed his great man-made river, which cost $60 billion to build. So there was a huge reservoir of water under the desert, and he dug into the big holes and got that water up and made a big river going up to Tripoli and Benghazi, the 2 big million citizen cities on the Mediterranean. So they had pristine, cleanest water you could get. And we flew down there allegedly because he was so evil, which was a blatant lie. He wasn't. He was not killing his own civilian population, quite the contrary. And then we flew, hundreds of kilometers into the desert and destroyed the great man-made river, Danish and English and American airplanes. And just to translate how much money this had cost, it would cost the same as 6 Nord Stream 2 gas lines. So anybody who's saying that, no, United States would never do that, well, I just have one thing to say. What about the Great Man-Made River? What? Well, they did that one. We know that. So so this is what we. So I hope that explains a little bit about money and how that works, how it could benefit all of us. Because
yeah, and I see it like this, because I think the big epiphany I had was that, well, it should maybe work like, I thought that the banks, they had the money when they gave a loan and they earned interest on it. And that seemed fine for me. Like, yeah, that's a nice concept. When I understood that they can actually create money and earn interest on money that doesn't exist, but they create it out of thin air, and then we can use it, and then we can borrow more money and use that money as security, and the debt just goes on and up and up, and it's a never-ending wheel. That's insane. But when you also realize that money today is not even worth anything, because from the beginning it was coins, often like in gold and silver and other metals, but then they turn into papers, but they were still tied to the gold that were in the walls. But then I don't know, I think it was 2 American presidents that understood that if we want to fool the world, we need to stop having the money tied to gold. So they said, no, we're not gonna have this gold standard anymore. We're gonna just start printing money to finance all the wars that we want, and bring inflation upon the world, the people in the world, and that's where we are today.
Right. Yeah, that's how they managed to start World War I and II. They privatized the National Bank in America in 1913, and with that they could then increase the monetary base and finance their participation in World War I and World War II.
Yeah, and it's very, yeah, it makes me a little sad, because it's
yeah, but and also it makes me sad that it's so simple that we should change it, and so few people are doing anything to change it. I mean, well, there you go. That is very strange, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's our responsibility to actually study and learn and understand what the fuck they are doing, and step up and say no, and demand a change. And that's our objective, to inform the people so that we can make different choices and start changing it. So
yeah, there are certain political correctness you're allowed to do. You're allowed to be a feminist. You're allowed to be an anti-racist. You're allowed to, I'm for the climate. Okay, what about all these people who are so for the climate? How many cow farts? How many hundreds of years could all the cows in the world fart just by this terror attack on the Nord Stream 2, right? How many hundreds of years of cow farts are we talking about here, right? Because this was clearly a terror attack by some evil people, no matter whether they were American or where they were from. I don't know where they were from. But clearly the people who are doing this stuff are the people who are benefiting from war. And these are the same people who come up with this global agenda of the climate. Is the big problem, right? The big problem, I think, is that there are people who are creating famine and wars and
yeah.
But I think it had an even more sinister objective, because they don't need the money, because as we just revealed, they can just print them and give it to themselves. But I think that they wanted to inject people with this poison. We'll find out soon enough, sadly.
Yeah. So I think we can agree upon that this is a big fraud towards the people of the world, and that it has harmed more people probably than anything else, since it has been a part of all the wars and all the inflation and all the poverty in the world, and there's so much tied to the money and how the money system has been functioning and handled for many years. So it's a super big problem, and there's a lot of greediness and corruption and big crimes going on. So I'm just thinking, how do we fix this? That's my next question.
Well, one of the things I would like to do is like be a little bit more proactive, because we are in the freedom movement. We are very reactive. When they come with a lockdown, we go out demonstrate. When they say they want to force vaccinators, we demonstrate. When they start a war, we demonstrate. I think we could be proactive in the sense that who's behind all these crimes. We could be more proactive, because we should think about who is behind all these wars, and try to take the battlefield to into their court. And one way is to look at financial freedom, because freedom is also financial freedom. We see so little economic support from the average person to our efforts, and that's because many of people can't pay their bills, so they struggle. So we don't have enough financial support. All our working days go to support the multinational corporations, and you know, the free time when people are buying their products and so on. So we're in a kind of a bad circle here. And I'm thinking, what if we created a tax system where human beings paid nothing and multinational corporations paid everything? Right now, it's the other way around. Most people don't know this, but actually, when I say that, well, they know that human beings pay 80 to 90% tax, because we pay 50% income tax, 25% VAT, then we pay car tax and liquor tax and tax on cigarettes, and marriage license tax and estate tax and property tax and whatever. So they know that we pay that. But most people don't know that the multinational corporations not only don't pay any tax at all, because they have transfer pricing. So they put all their profits in countries with zero corporate tax, and then all the expenses in countries like Sweden and Denmark. So they don't pay any tax. It's even worse than that. They go to Denmark and other countries and ask for tax breaks, and they get it. So if a multinational corporation say we could put a big factory in your country, Denmark would say okay. Then they say, can we get free rent? They say yes. Okay. Can we get free electricity? And Denmark would say yes. Can we also get a tax break for our entire management team, so they only pay a flat tax of 20 to 30,000 euro per year, even though they might make millions and millions of, and that's without their share options, right? Equity options. And then Denmark would also say yes. So we have a Danish government. There's no law that allows them to make deals with international corporations. They just do it. There's never been a debate in parliament about it. Are you Danish voters who voted me into the parliament, are you happy that you pay 90% tax, and Mr. Global over here, he not only pays 0% tax, but we actually pay him to be here? Are you happy with that? We never had that discussion, ever. Most people don't even know it takes place. And when you then come out and say, hey, I think the multinational corporations should pay tax, this is a beautiful example of how brainwashed people are. Just do this. Ask 10 people and say to them, multinational corporations don't pay any tax. And I bet you more than half of them will say the following sentence: yes, but they create a lot of jobs. They will all say that like an automaton. I'm not even kidding. This is, so if you want to find out which one of your friends are most brainwashed, just ask them this question and see who answers that sentence. I bet you it'll be more than half of them that will say that. This is how successful they have been to brainwash the population to get away with paying no tax at all. They have used the educational system. They have used all the mass mainstream lying media, fake news media, and this is how they do it. But I can't remember anywhere in the Constitution where it said that human beings should pay 90% tax and dead corporations should pay 0%. Foreign dead corporations, of course, Danish and Swedish corporations, local businesses, they pay, not only they pay their 25% corporate tax, then the owner will pay his income tax, and he will also be, we are also being looked on from the government, from the people in the government that whose salaries we are paying. We are all seen as criminals because they know for a fact, 90% tax is a little bit difficult. We would also like to have a little bit of that, our own money. We'd like to keep a little bit, so they know that we will try to, pay less if we could. So we have thousands and thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people employed in the government who are looking at Swedish and Danish citizens as if we were criminals. We're not. It's our money. They are stealing our money, and then they're handing it to globalists. So I'm suggesting, how about, instead of we having now a pyramid system where the entire tax system is engineered and designed so that all the money goes all the way this way up, how about we have a peaceful revolution? I don't want to have a bloody Bolshevik bankster revolution where the upper middle class is getting killed, which was what happened in every other revolution that has been engineered by the banksters. No, let's have a peaceful economic system change where we just engineer, we just tweak a little bit here, tweak a little bit there, and the bottom line result will be that the money will start trickling the other way, from the top all the way down to creating a big middle class, human beings. So instead of taxing human beings, we tax dead corporations. And this is, I think, something I'm talking with people about all over the world right now. Today I was speaking with people in Australia. 2 weeks ago I was in Czech Republic, and I've been in 5 different capitals in Europe in the last 7 weeks. So we're not, and a lot of people now who are beginning to say, why don't we attack them where it hurts? And that this would hurt them because, I mean, they have so much money, they don't need it anyway, right? But what really would hurt them would be the freedom we would get if we lived in a country with one big middle class. That doesn't mean we should all have the same salary. I'm not saying that at all. You should be allowed to become rich. You should be allowed to work hard and excel. I don't have a problem with that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, let's remove poverty. Let's make sure that everybody has enough money to be able to afford to go on a demonstration, for example, or to be able to afford to take off some time to look after a sick family member or take an education. Or, I mean, we need more people with economic freedom, not less. We do not need Klaus Schwab's global reset where you will own nothing and they will own everything. We don't want that, and then they will give us some universal basic income. This is clearly a strategy, right?
I think I get the concept, but will it change it? Will it change the root problem? Will it switch and we can get back to a healthy system then? Because I don't see how. Maybe it's a good action and it will make the money flow in another direction, but will it actually make things a lot better?
I think so, because when I see people in Sweden, and Denmark and Sweden are very similar, I think, in many aspects.
Yeah.
The people working in the public sector, they're really nice people. Even though the whole law, all the legislation is designed to criminalize human beings. The rules and regulations are so strict that the government, they know that we've all broken the law. I mean, if they start looking into what we've been doing, everybody has broken the law, because the law, it changes all the time. Nobody knows what the law is about anyway. They change the rules all the time, and they're so strict that everybody is breaking it. And And I think that most people in the public sector, they are working with a human heart. So they're always looking at it or very often, most of the time, I think they are looking at from the citizens' point of view, and they're not being as tough as they could. If they just went by the book, they could crucify us every single day if they wanted to, but they're not. The most people in the system, they love their country, and they love their fellow countrymen and countrywomen, and they share their free time with them, and that's why the system is working in spite of how it is designed, and it's working because people are good, I think. So I definitely think
there's a lot of good people.
I think it would work if it can. So that's why I'm saying, imagine that you not only have good people in the government, but actually gave them tools and gave them rules and regulations which would benefit humanity, not punish them, not criminalize them, not steal their time.
An interesting thing would be, because since you have a party in Denmark, JFK 21, that you run, if you got the power majority, let's say, and you was in charge of changing how the financial system works in Denmark, what would you do? Would you do this? What else would you do in order to actually bring back the power to the people?
Well, I mean, first of all, two important things. I would try to work on it globally, so that we would implement these things in many countries at the same time. And second of all, there are a lot of people now talking about building new systems, and I think we should have more direct democracy. We should have as many decisions taken as close to where people live as possible. So we had a reform a few years ago, maybe a little bit more than a few, maybe 15, 20 years ago, where we went from 279 kommuner in Denmark, councils, down to 100. I think we should definitely go straight back to that again. The smaller councils were much more efficient than the bigger ones. Much less bureaucracy, much less administration cost per citizen in the smaller councils. The bigger the council, the more bureaucracy, not only in total amount, but also per capita. I know it's counterintuitive. It's not what people say. They say, no, if it becomes bigger, it becomes more efficient. No, it doesn't. Just look at the numbers. The numbers don't lie. So that's the first thing we need to do. We need to have more councils, not less. And then I think that each of the councils should be divided into the parishes, what we in Danish call zone. Maybe you have the same word in Swedish. I can't remember the Swedish word for it, but parishes. Every church has a parish around it. So, and I think we should have jobs, whatever is left of the public sector. That once you remove tax, and then everybody would be working in the private sector, you probably wouldn't need such a big public sector, because people would be busy working, creating wealth for themselves and their family and their society they live in, creating real jobs. Not all these jobs where we have half the population and they're basically digging a hole, and then another one is coming back, putting the earth back in the hole again. That's like half the population. So what we need more people with what we say warm hands, and the other ones are with the cold hands. All these people making regulations, and you spend so much time filling in forms instead of working and creating wealth and so on. So that's the other part, important thing that I should do. If we had the majority, that would basically be make sure that I decide as little as possible. I want as much power as possible go out in the smallest public group of people, parishes, and then on top of that, direct democracy, and not on a computer. It should be with a paper ballot, and every parish should be able to go in and count. It should be the vote should be there. It should be checked by human beings, not by a computer.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because what would I do if I were in charge of deciding over Sweden's economy and changes? What major changes do we actually need? I think, first of all, it's a bit like, I don't have enough knowledge, but there are so many good experts. So I think we could put them together and come up with things. But Yeah, I think we should experiment with removing the concept of money and finding something else. That's my opinion. And do that in a small scale in order to find something else that works. And like you say, I also agree 100% with that we should make everything smaller, go back to more, how do you say, autonomic, like self, autonomt självstyre på svenska. I don't know. I think you understand. But yeah, interesting.
So I have I have 6 different ideas that would make the money trickle down to the middle class. But basically, to sum it all up, you could basically just do one of them.
Yeah.
You could, for example, just do take a tax on transfers of money, and then you could remove all taxes, everything, also taxes on cigarettes and liquor and licenses and your driver license tax and your car tax and every tax could be removed if you put in a 2% tax on transfers of money. So let's say you go down to ICA and you spent 1,000 Swedish krona, then it will cost you 20 krona. Or you spend 100 Swedish krona, it costs you 2 krona. That's it. And that's because there are so much money is being transferred, and it's much more fair because people with a lot of money, they transfer more money, so they support the society more. And all the people who become rich, they have become rich thanks to their ability to operate in the society. So they took out wealth that they created some of it, other people created something else, and the fact that the nation had an infrastructure, natural resources, whatever it is they're exploiting, created some of it. So I don't think it's unfair to the rich people either, but it would be a tax system that would be much more just, and the people who right now are polluting the world, starting wars, exploiting the monetary system by making money out of thin air, those guys would be the ones who would pay the bulk of the bill.
So what's the bright future then? What's your vision about the economy and what do you see ahead?
Well, the good news I see is that Malthus and Darwin are morons, imbeciles, and they were so wrong. Like so many experts are wrong. All this Malthusian idea is that the more people we are, the more the world is going to collapse. And all the evidence points to the exact opposite. The world is abundant. It is so wealthy. It's exactly the other way around. As we become more and more people, we are creating super abundance. We are finding out ways to increase productivity and growth and wealth and lifestyle. And that is in spite of the government trying to destroy it by sucking out 80 to 90% of whenever you create 1,000 kroner, they suck out immediately 800 of your 1,000 kroner. So you only have 200 to send on to the next person, and then they suck out 160. So he only has 40 kroner to send on. So with only 2 transactions between human beings, with a beating heart and blood in their veins, they have sucked out all the energy. This is the system we have now. And in spite of that, in spite of all the inefficient usage of that money they sucked out, and they're spending on sitting, having meetings with each other, feeling very important, creating stupid regulations that makes life miserable for people. Still, we keep working, we keep plowing ahead, and we keep creating more abundance for our children than we had or our parents had. And these are the facts. And I think that the globalists, because I think many of them believe this lie that, oh, if you become rich, Philip, then I become poor. It's a zero-sum game. We cannot both become rich. Yes, we can. The world is so beautiful. If we work together, I can make you rich and you can make me rich. This is how beautiful that the creator, whoever created this planet, has made it. He made it so beautiful. Yeah. But I think the globalists believe in this lie, that the Malthusian thing, that that there's not enough. I think they're really scared. I think many of them are really scared about overpopulation. They think that the world is going to collapse and the climate will change. I believe some of them probably believe all that nonsense. The fact is, there was arousing this brilliant Swedish scientist. He came out with this, that, you know, if you leave it as it is, the world population will go up to maybe somewhere between 10 and 12 billion, and then it will flatten out. It will sort itself out. The best thing to do is to create a huge middle class. Then people will have 2 kids. And everything will stabilize. We will have a high standard of living. You know, it's hard work to have kids, right? We love our children, but boy, do they give us gray hair, right? You know, the small kids, small problems; big kids, big problems, right? So, everything will stabilize. Just leave it to the people. Yeah. Trust people; they are good, and don't believe in Malthus. Do not believe in the globalists. And 99% of the time, don't believe in the experts. Don't believe them. They're wrong most of the time. All the books I read about wisdom of the crowd and so on, it turns out that if you ask an expert about anything, and you just ask 1,000 random people and take the average of what a random person who has no clue about it will say, and most of the time, you're more right by asking 1,000 random people who are not experts in it. Their average answer will be more exact than if you ask the experts. There's a lot of studies to that effect.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and you have a video and you've been doing where you talk about more solutions, but you have at least presented your main concept here, and I'm going to try to have some final questions here. But regarding to what we have been speaking about, what can everyone do themselves in order to help make a change when it comes to economy?
Well, Philip, you have been organizing huge demonstrations in Sweden, and I've done trying to do my best here in Denmark.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, little you, little me, how much we have managed to stop just by saying no? And we were so few. On the end of the day, there were so few people who did it. Most people put on their silly mask and this slave ritual, but it's a free universe. Even the enemy, who are trying to impose all these draconian, deeply, in my view, satanic measures, evil measures on us. Yeah. They still abide the general rule that it has to be voluntarily. They will start a war between Germans and Russians if the Germans and Russians will volunteer to kill each other. If they don't, it won't happen. And the same with the injections. They were all volunteer. It was all free. You could say no. There was if you were a parent in Sweden or in Denmark, if you come down to your school and you said to them, "You do not poke my child in the nose with that stick, or else," I guarantee you, they wouldn't have done it. Most people didn't. Most people were cowards. And that makes me very, very sad and very disappointed, to be honest. But it is a free world. We should grow some balls. Come on. What do you live for? Try to live for something that is beautiful, something that is just, and something that is right, instead of just bowing your head as a slave. Come on, it's not worth living. Such a life is not worth living.
Yeah, that's a good. So grow more balls.
Grow more balls.
That's a good.
Like Christina Anderson from MEP. She's one of the women I know who got most balls in Europe. Or Catherine Austin Fitz, my good friend, or Dolores Kay. You don't have to be a man to grow balls, right?
Yeah. I think so. Okay, so but how are you, like, what are you doing right now, and how can we support and read more and find out what you are doing in this big adventure and big societal change?
So, I mean, please start making a decision that we humans should not pay tax. It should be the other guys. Accept the idea that actually you deserve more. You who are listening to this, you are a good person. You deserve a good quality of life. You deserve never to fear being homeless, and never to fear having an empty fridge. You deserve it. Make a decision. Because I think a lot of problem is that a lot of people don't feel that. So it's up to people. Whatever we do in my party, we try to make it as a template. One example, we just came out with two newspapers, one last month and one this month. We call it Vax-tidene. It's a you know, a bit of a joke. Vax means to be vaccinated, but also means to be clever in Danish. So Vax-tidene, and tidene means time. So Vax-tidene, clever times or whatever. But we have these two, but also there's a template. So you can go to scandinavianfreedom.news and you can find the two latest newspapers, and it gets better than that. There's a template you can click on, and then you can make your own newspaper. You can take any of the articles you don't like out, you put in your own, and you can make your own newspapers. It's very simple. So I think that is a good format to share with people who are not awake yet. Print out a newspaper for them and share this with them. I think we have a lot of success with these newspapers now. What we're doing now is we're going out with 10,000 of these newspapers, and we go hand deliver them in the most affluent areas of Denmark, the biggest houses. They get these because we need the middle class to wake up now, because they are next in line. If they want to go through with a great reset and universal basic income and take everything you own from you, that means they're going for the middle class now. The way they're going to get away with it is by bribing the working class. That is going to be, oh, you're already on welfare, you already live in a flat. Now we're going to give you a universal basic income, which will be 20% more. Isn't that nice? Look how good we are. And the working class will go, oh yeah, that sounds nice. Yeah, and these rich people in the houses, they can know. It's about time they learn how it is to be poor and living in a flat like that. You know, so this is their strategy. They want to make everybody equally poor. That is always how it is with their Bolshevism. Whether it's like now, it's a green Bolshevism, climate Bolshevism, or whether it's this deadly red Bolshevism in 1917. It's always making everybody equally poor, right? So we need to be more ambitious than that. We need to move everybody up to middle class, everybody as a minimum, and then have people excel and create wealth for themselves. By all means, you know, get a big house, get a bigger house, whatever, work hard, whatever you do, go for it, right? But it should not be the people who are criminals who have the big houses, who have the big cars and their private islands, all the people making money on human trafficking, on wars, on drugs, on usurping the money creation, on insider trading. They're all a bunch of criminals right now. Not all of them, but I guess most of them are. So I think that go to scandinavianfreedom.news and look at our last two newspapers. That is one way of
those are really great. We're gonna paste the link below, and the link to everything else you're doing, because you're doing a lot of good stuff.
Thanks, Philip. So
I have some short final questions here that I just want you to answer.
Okay.
Because it's about economy. So here they are. What is the best investment right now, according to you?
Okay, so I mean, I'm not going to give the investment advice, of course, but diversify. Don't put all your money in cryptos. Don't put all your money in gold. Don't put all your money in real estate. And obviously, if there's a war, there's a big fear that equity market will go down and house prices will go down as well. And there's also a fear of inflation. And I still think that you will always need a place to live. So make sure you are exposed in some way to the real estate market, because you need a place to live. And I have some friends who've sold their properties now, and they are of course expecting the market to fall, and then they will buy, and that's fine. And I'm saying to them the following: but you could be right and end up paying 50% more for the house. How's that? If there's a hyperinflation, if the governments decide to print a lot of money to get out of the problem with the war, that means that you could have a situation where the house, relatively to everything else, underperforms. So it doesn't go up as much as everything else. Let's say that everything goes up with 200%. But then the house price might go up with 50%. That still means that if you were planning to buy a house for 4 million, you might have to pay 6 million for it, right? So you could be, if you're not exposed to the property market in a situation where there's inflation, you could end up losing a lot of money on it. So I think that before you start thinking about whether you should buy crypto or gold or equities or hedge funds or whatever, I think you should at least make sure you have a small flat or some exposure to the real estate market. Even if you're thinking about you want to wait and buy the big house you're planning, whatever, maybe have some exposure to the real estate market. That is what I would say.
Okay, so what would you definitely not invest in right now?
I would not have a lot of money in the banks, because they can sometimes do this bail-in where they just take all your money. They did that in Cyprus, right? They took all the money over 100,000. So they just took all the money.
Will we see a financial crash in the near future?
I mean, this is a little bit the way I see it now. The war in Ukraine, I think it's the politicians get out of jail card, because and so they say, oh, look over here, you know, Putin is worse than Hitler. And I think so. If the people in power are afraid of being lynched by the people, then then all bets are off. I mean, anything can happen, of course, but I still think there are enough good people in the system that won't let that happen. But I mean, I'm a bleeding optimist. I don't know.
That's good. And the last question: what advice do you want to give to young people growing up in this madness that it is? What advice when it comes to investing and preparing for the future?
In a way, they're quite spoiled because they have their metaverse and they enjoy that so much. They've had a higher lifestyle than my generation had in many ways. But I was shocked when I came out to so many gymnasiums in Denmark with hundreds of different scientific articles with evidence that the masks were dangerous to them. And I go to a gymnasium with 1,000 children, and only 2 or 3 would come out coming like, yeah, what are you doing? Okay, yeah, give me a flyer like this, very, very meek. I'm like, what is going on? When I was 18 years old, if anybody, red, green, or blue, came in a bus with 50 demonstrators and said that my headmaster was doing something wrong, I agreed with them first, and then I would look into what they were saying. But I would agree with them first, and so would we all. I was right wing, and some of my friends were left wing. We were all good friends in those days. It was okay to disagree. We were still friends afterwards. We would have massive political arguments, red and green, red and blue, against each other. Big arguments, screaming arguments in the class, and then we would go party together afterwards. We were best friends. Those were the days. And then, but we would always, if someone said our headmaster was doing something, he would never have been able to put masks on my generation, ever. That would have been an impossibility. And I am so disappointed. I'm not saying, I'm just being honest here. I'm so disappointed with young people, so disappointed that so few of them had any fighting spirit whatsoever. So best thing they could do would be to stop watching mainstream TV, number one. And number two, study trivium, study how to think, how to study, how to really find out what is up and down in this world, because basically the young generation, in my view, are not going to be popular, but they're so brainwashed. It's so sad. I mean, you are an exception. You are a young man. There's not many like you, and I'm glad to see my kids also have not taken the injections. They've also been understanding what's going on, but it's almost as if 30 years and up, the percentage of people understanding what's going on is much higher. I mean, we have gymnasiums where the entire class, maybe there's one. If there's one who didn't want to be, then he or she was alone. And you cannot say that 100% of 57-year-olds were, or 100% of 75-year-olds were. There were, I mean, at least 30% in every age group above 30 would not. But it seems if you are 17 or 18, they all followed the crowd, all of them. So few people were brave enough. So I would say again to the young people, grow some balls. You know,
Grow some
don't
balls.
trust the authorities. Do not trust the experts. Do not trust your teachers. They do not have your best interest at heart. They're trying to indoctrinate you. They're trying to brainwash you. And if you study triviumeducation.com, you go to that page, you will find out how to think, how to study, and you will find out that what your government has told you, what your teachers have told you, have been blatant lies, most of it.
That's a good ending. Grow some balls. That's the
Yeah.
name of this this whole episode.
Yeah.
That's a good concept. Thanks a lot, Mads, and continue doing your great work and fighting and keeping the flag high in Denmark. I'll try to do the same here in Sweden, and we'll eventually meet soon, I think.
We'll see you soon again, Philip. Nice to talk to
Yes.
you.
Thanks.